Hi, and welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today we're going to talk about the trade-offs we make in business. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. I am Kale Houser, your host today. I appreciate you joining me. Hey, I got to thinking a little bit the last couple of days about trade-offs because a couple conversations that I've had with some different people, and there seems to be always, as with anything, there's this balancing act of there's these pluses and minuses, pros and cons that we always have to make these decisions about and weigh the impact of those decisions and choosing, one path or another. It's just the nature of life. It's the way things go, as you can, throughout your history, right? I won't go too philosophical into that depth of concept of choosing your path or anything like that. But this was brought to my forefront recently because, so I'm dealing with a little bit of quote unquote, not osteoporosis. I'm losing some bone density, and I've done a whole bunch of tests and things like that because, every doctor that I've talked to is like, you're too young to have osteoporosis. I'm like, I totally agree with you. But nobody can seem to pinpoint why. But recently a doctor, they kind of, after some tests and stuff, they figured out that my body was disposing of all my calcium that I'm supposed to be holding on to, through my urine. And I was just, getting rid of it through my natural waste process. And the solution for this is, without going into, I guess there's a whole osteoporosis protocol, but that's kind of reserved for, elderly people that need it more than I do. So the solution for this, the doctor proposed, was for me to take this blood pressure medicine. I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. Like those two seem totally unrelated to each other because my heart is just fine and all my blood pressure has always been really good. But she goes, no, it's actually I don't know if the side benefit or an additional benefit or side effect. I don't know what you would call it. Definitely not a doctor or a medical professional by any stretch of the imagination, but said it actually is a calcium blocker. So it will block my body from processing calcium, through my kidneys and livers and all that kind of stuff and help my body hold on to it. I'm like, first of all, my first reaction was, nope, not happening. I'm not going to start taking a medication for a problem I don't have, i.e. high blood pressure, in order to alleviate a minor problem that I have right now. And certainly, having this low bone density isn't a huge issue right now. But I think we can all see the writing on the wall. If it's allowed to continue, by the time I'm, 60, I'm going to have like these pencil thin bones and stuff that are just so porous that I become, Samuel Jackson's character on, Glass, where any little thing breaks my bones. So after some discussion and some pros and cons, because she said, there's a risk that my blood pressure tanks. And so, I've got to monitor my blood pressure and all that kind of stuff, which is not ideal. But she proceeded to explain the drawbacks of if I don't do this, and if I basically allow my body to continue to do what it's been doing the last, probably 15, 20 years, however long this has been, I've been having this issue, that eventually, I will lose so much density that I will start breaking my bones, and I will start having, these fractures in my spine and all those kind of things. So I'm like, okay, I definitely don't want that, because obviously healing from a fractured spine is much more difficult to heal from and get fixed than dealing with, slight side effects of blood pressure medication. So we decided to go with that route. And it really just got me thinking, and, like I said, it's pluses and minuses. My initial reaction was like, no way. No frickin' way was I going to, start doing that for things I just explained. But then through more analysis and more discussion, because it was interesting too, just from a pure, like being a customer of this doctor, she went into like her initial consult, I guess if you want to call it. Her initial consult was just, yep, here's this medication. Boom, this is what you need, right? And there was no explanation whatsoever because I'm sure she's used to people in general. We trust doctors. We have this kind of faith in them that they know what they're talking about. Although I would argue in recent times, we're starting to lose more and more of that just natural inherent trust in our doctors due to some of the things that have been going on with, this, what. So I pushed, with me pushing back on her, And not mean or anything, but I basically told her like, no, like that is not a good trade-off for me. Does not seem like a good idea that I would start having potential complications from something totally unrelated to what I am here seeing you for. To her credit, I think she kind of realized this, and she said, I'm sorry, I think I presented this wrong to you, because all she did was presented it basically like a pharmacist. Like, well, here you go, here's your medication, take these once in the morning, with food, and monitor your blood pressure in the afternoon. Right? And most people, certainly not me, I don't respond well to that, because, hey, this is what I do. I try to get people involved in the process. I try to get businesses involved and develop their culture and create relationships and all those types of things. I don't take orders very well, hence me not being in the military anymore either. So, to her credit, she kind of walked back, and then she went back into what I would consider doctor mode of, hey, patient, this is what's going on with your body. This is, what we can do to help alleviate these symptoms and these pain and these long-term effects. And it became more of a discussion of her kind of, opening my world into her world to be able to see the benefits, even despite some potential consequences and side effects of this medication. So, needless to say, she brought me on board, right? And it just got me thinking, like, man, if you'd have just opened with this conversation, one, it would have been a lot shorter. We wouldn't be doing this kind of little bit of arguing back and forth about this, and you having to convince me. And two, it would endear me more to you as my doctor, instead of just, hey, I've got to go to somebody. It's like going to your mechanic. Like, I don't know how to fix an engine, so I've got to go to the mechanic. But instead of moving into this realm that some mechanics are in, people have a concept of mechanics of are just trying to rip you off, and no, I don't need that blinker fluid and all this kind of stuff of, these doctors need to stay as doctors, as professional advisors to help people understand, and not just take these medications because I said so, right? That's never a relationship you want to have. I think we've covered a lot of that in previous podcasts. So, trade-offs is what this is all kind of about, and me processing the trade-offs of this medication and how that applies to business as well, because we do this every day as business owners and leaders in our business. We make trade-offs, and some of the things that we go through a lot, and I'm going to kind of list some of these classic trade-offs, and maybe you deal with some of these right now, maybe you've dealt with them in the past, maybe you're dealing with all of them right now. Please absolutely, drop me a comment in the comments below, and let other people know about this podcast if you are enjoying it. I would greatly appreciate it. But I was going through this list of, I would argue kind of the classic trade-off is you've got what you would consider a bad employee, a poor employee, whether it be by attitude, productivity, anything other metric that you would qualify as bad, and you hold on to them. Because like in previous podcasts, like I've said, they're doing some level of work, right? They're getting something done. It may be begrudgingly on their part, and it may be not the highest quality, but at least they're getting something done, right? The data is getting put into your system, the paperwork's getting filed, whatever that is for you. The boxes are getting folded or the pallet's getting moved. Something is getting done. So you're making that trade-off of like, yeah, Rick over there kind of sucks to be around. Nobody wants to be around him because he's such a, downer all the time. But at least he knows how to drive a forklift and, it moves his couple of pallets that I need him to do, or unloads those trucks, whatever that is. But you've made that trade-off, right? You've weighed the consequences, good and bad, of whether getting rid of him in the process of finding somebody else, or keeping him and dealing with the attitude, or dealing with the showing up late, in exchange for, whatever amount of work that's getting done. The other one is a big one too, especially as small business owners, and really if you're in startup mode, is, paying yourself versus taking any profits and revenue that you make and putting it and investing it back into your business, right? So you're making those sacrifices now of, paying yourself that salary where you can go do whatever you want. You can buy your boat and go hit the lake or anything of that nature, versus, reinvesting it into, more supplies or advertising or building or hiring more people, whatever that is. You're making that trade-off of that short-term financial gain versus building your business up, right? And you're sacrificing for that. And the other big one that kind of goes along with that is you, as the business owner, as the leader, taking a vacation versus hiring additional help. a lot of, definitely in America, because we have this attitude of, we have to do it ourselves and nobody's as good as I am, and I'm the only one that can do this job, right? It's not quite micromanaging, but it's definitely this solopreneur mentality that we get stuck in, and it just perpetuates itself. And before you know it, you're like, man, I work here like 60, 70 hours a week, some 80, some 90, you kind of know your limits there. But you're like, man, I haven't gone to a family Christmas in Ohio for like 3 years. I haven't seen my brother and sister that live across the country in 5 years, right? As I'm trying to get this up and going. I haven't sat on a beach and taken a day off, all those types of things, or taken a vacation with your family, right? Our anniversaries have come and gone, but we've been too busy down at the shop to be able to even get away for a night out, right? To celebrate our anniversary, those types of things. But it all comes down to, you're either, whether by you're just restricted financially, or just you are blocking it, of hiring that additional help to bring those hands that you can trust, right? You go through a process, train them up, give them that responsibility, test that responsibility, verify that responsibility that they're doing the appropriate things, and then you let it go, and you trust those other people to do those jobs, to allow yourself to step back and do the things that really matter outside of your business. And then, and I touched on this slightly, is that do-it-yourself trade-off versus hiring a manager, right? Maybe you've grown to the level that, you've got 10 or 15 people that are all working for you, and it was just fine when there was you and 4 other people and dealing with the scheduling issues and the different personalities and stuff. But as that has grown, you can't justify the cost of that mid-level manager, or a supervisor or a shift lead or site lead, whatever that looks like for your business. So you continue to take it on yourself, right? And it really is just too much for one person to handle, especially as the business owner, if you're doing this multi-hat role. And you really have to be able to hire and train and set up for success some sort of mid-level, in between you as a business owner that's dealing with, the future of your business and where you're taking it, and the pacing and the vision and the mission, and getting more clients and all those types of things, and getting your name out there, versus the day-to-day, operations of the business, and handling schedules and sick people and leave and vacation, all those types of things. But you've made that trade-off of, well, why do I want to pay somebody, whatever it is, $80,000 a year, $50,000 a year, 120, 100, $250,000 a year, to do something that I can do. But the reality is you can't do it. And while you are, quote unquote, doing it, there are things that are getting sacrificed in order for you to do that. And certainly just that burnout will start to take place, and you can't do that for very long. So you're making that trade-off. And then the other big one, and I alluded to it again, is that spending time with your family versus all the time developing your business. And this is especially true for people that are in that startup phase. And this is a lot with Liz and I right now, because Kale Houser Leadership is still in, I would consider us in absolute startup phase, and we're making conscious choices and trade-offs of, do we go up to the family reunion up in Virginia for Liz's family, because she's one of 6, and all her siblings and their families are coming in this summer? Or do we, not spend that money in flights and all that, and just being away from work, and really it's the time is the biggest part of it, and stay here and build this business, because we know, right, we're never going to get this time back, and if we lose that momentum, right, taking a vacation right now in the middle of startup phase isn't the best ideal, because momentum is a legitimate thing. But maybe you're at that point that you should be starting to, well, you're really having to make those trade-off balances, and we all do this with work, right? Do I work mid shifts, so I trade off getting to put my kids to sleep, and all those types of things. But those are things you have to consider. And another big one that people don't think about consciously, or they do initially, but then it kind of fades to the background, is that trade-off of, maybe you've had this dream of opening your restaurant, right, or starting some cute little boutique store in downtown Dallas, Texas, or whatever that is, and you leave your high-paying job, your career that you've worked so hard to start and earn, but it's starting to lose its luster a little bit. The grind or the future of it is starting to show cracks in the armor. So you decided to pivot and shift to this new venture, and you leave that kind of security, although are any jobs any more secure by any stretch of the imagination in today's society, for this new venture, right? This new entrepreneurial opportunity for yourself. And that's a trade-off you've made, right? Hopefully you've discussed this with your family, and you've discussed this with, the people that are important to you and that you trust to help advise you in such things. But this is a trade-off and a sacrifice that you have probably chose. Especially if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably more in the latter, maybe not necessarily walking away from a, $500,000 a year, $1 million a year job or anything to start your Etsy shop. But certainly people that have, left careers to go do something that they're really actually passionate about and gives them that fulfillment. So this really kind of, you can't ignore this because you are constantly making these trade-offs and these sacrifices and these choices. And make sure you have a process, especially on the big ones that have massive impact for you, right? Do I go and buy that additional location? Do I set up a second or third, opportunity? Somebody wants to franchise with my stuff, do I go with that? What are the trade-offs of that? Certainly those level of decisions you need to have a process for, consult legal and financial and, all those different types of things, and your CPAs and stuff for those. But also just kind of look at, what are some of the ways this is going to cost me that aren't like readily evident, right? Cost me in time, cost me in relationships, cost me in energy, cost me in stress, cost me in, man, if I go through with this merger, am I even going to be able to step away from here and, see my family, or, my sister's getting married in June, and am I going to be able to even go to her wedding, or am I going to be, knee deep in handling this merger, whatever that is. Those are kind of things that you as the business owner, as the leader, are responsible for. This is what you do, right? Is make these decisions. So I just want to encourage you in that as you're coming up to these types of decisions and forks in the road, that you really kind of analyze and look at the costs and the trade-offs and the pluses and minuses, as with anything. And secondly, just pure Kale Houser plug. If you're going to your doctor, don't just sit there and, nod your head like, okay, doctor, whatever you say, right? Like actually, be inquisitive, do your own little bit of research, like, oh, what is this medication used for? And what are the side effects, right? And kind of always discuss alternatives, hey, is there anything else I can do? Like, what are the negative impacts of this, and, things like that. So don't just be somebody that shows up and does whatever your doctors, because doctors, hey, guess what? They're human and they make mistakes as well. So make sure you're taking a little bit of responsibility for your own healthcare as well. That was my little plug at the end. I hope you enjoyed it. Hey, thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, please like and subscribe. That would be hugely helpful. Share with your friends, with your coworkers, with your dentist, with whomever. That would be legitimate to help the channel grow, and we can start, getting some more high-profile guests and spreading the word. And if anything, check out the new site, kalehouser.com. Book a call with us. We'd love to, kind of touch base with you and see if we can help you at all, and how Kale Houser Leadership can help you beyond this podcast. Have a fantastic afternoon, no matter where you are at in the world. Bye.